Hello, it's me, and to kick off and to finalize what I've called Cuboid Week, I'm going to finish off with the bricks. Basically, before I did a little bit closer in depth look at the odd to even asymmetric puzzles, like this example of the 4x4x5, the odd to even or the even to even or odd to odd symmetric shapeshifters as typified by this 3x3x5. And then kind of avoided, but now I'm ready to turn back to the bricks. Now the bricks are the ones that have three different numbered sides, as typified by these guys. Now who can doubt that we're living in the best of times when it comes to puzzle solving and puzzle collecting? The best of times, because we're living in the time of Tom Z. Yes, Tom Z, as we now cap off from the 1x2x3, the 2x3x4, 3x4x5, which was my first introduction into the bricks, and now the epic, fantastic 4x5x6, a brick of giant proportions. Now, when approaching a puzzle like this, it's good to first get perspective, because we're about to embark upon a much more detailed and potentially exhaustive solution. But if you keep your perspective about you, you'll be okay, because we're not dealing just with a single, asymmetry or a single symmetry. We're dealing with both a symmetry and an asymmetry. Here's a 1x2x3, and as you can see, you've got two, basically we've got an odd and an odd one here. Turn it down. This particular one does display shape-shifting capabilities from here and here and here. This is a pretty neat one, not your typical 1x2x3, but does conform to the rules of shape-shifting, as it should be. Then, of course, you've got Garrett's really nice 2x3x4, which I've demonstrated in the past. Now, notice with this, you have one area that you're able to do shape-shifting. In this case, you've got the 2 layer, and then you've got the 4 layer. Move it on down here, and you're able to do your shape-shifting. That's kind of fun. But that's the only perspective that you're able to do it with. If you try to turn it this way, you won't. So in solving, it's important to understand that I have to do kind of a combination of strategies from the odd-even asymmetry, or the even-to-even asymmetry, or the even-to-even symmetry, or the odd-to-odd symmetry for that matter. In which case, I will define a top layer as the one where I can turn it 90 degrees and still get some motion from it. So in this case, the 2x4 layer over here. So this would be the top layer. Because if I do that, I can solve it much like a cube in this direction and like a cuboid in another direction. This is really much more apparent in the 3x4x5, which was, again, my first introduction to a brick. So when starting to solve this, the first thing I want to do is get my perspective. What's going to be my top layer? What's going to be my bottom layer? Now you can see just by way of demonstration just how great this turns. All of Tom Z's products are just incredibly well put together. They're Shapeways products, so they have kind of this almost styrofoamy feel, but not his products. There's a robustness to it. There's a crispness to it that's really very, very pleasing. So in this case, as you recall, I defined the top layer as the one where I'm going to be able to do my shape shifting. In this case here, my yellow is going to be my top and my green was going to be my bottom, because I can move 90 degrees from here and then solve it like that. So I'm going to similarly find the even-to-even ones. In this case, it's going to be the 4x6 layer. So here's 4, here's 6, which means this is going to be my top layer. Now what Tom very cleverly did is he gave us a little bit of a hint in terms of the solve. He patterned it the same way. This is odd to odd. This is even to even, and yet this is what's going to do my 90-degree turns. Now, whether he planned it that way, I don't know. He's brilliant enough to where he just might have, but this was a good clue as to how to orient this puzzle. So, without any further ado, we will go ahead and solve it. Now, to solve this, we're going to do this in 3 segments, in 3 steps, basically. And to know how to solve this, you need to know how to do a 4x4x5, a 3x3x5, and a 3x4x5. Put these together, and all that you enjoy about these are in this one puzzle over here. Now, I'm not going to make any assumptions that you've seen the tutorials on these. I welcome you to do that. I'm going to try to make it as self-contained as possible. So if I start moving a little too slow, that's the reason. So what I'm going to do is just sort of demonstrate the motion of this puzzle by just doing some simple scrambles here. Now I'm just doing 180-degree scrambles at the moment before I get into shape-shifting. I usually like to do that to make sure that I haven't accidentally, made things too simple by keeping things together, because once I shape-shift, then I'm going to be kind of in a position where certain extended pieces are going to be naturally bonded to each other. And I don't want to make it too simple where, say over here I've got two red ones and a green one, and that's going to be too simple there. So let's see about separating those out. Okay, and now that I think I've gotten a good enough scramble here, that things are all messed up, then I can go into the shape-shifting part. Shape-shifting part, again, if this were the 4x6 layer, I know that this is where I'm going to be able to do my 90-degree turns. So over here, I can't just stop it here. This is going to be 180-degree turns over here. And I think you already know that. And the amount of variability that I can do with this puzzle is pretty incredible. The turning is very crisp. It's a very clean puzzle. It's really a lot like the 4x4x6. And I can see that Tom's technique and his ability, his building techniques have actually improved over the years. I can see kind of a difference from this to this. This, moves great. It's kind of a little styrofoamy in its feel. This is a lot more crisp and a lot more hardened. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to do my scramble until it's to my liking. So, abracadabra. Okay, this is probably about as fully scrambled a 4x5x6 that I can do. So I'm going to divide the solution to this into three segments, into three parts. The first part is basically getting, because this is a giant cube, you have to get all of your centers, and we're going to try to navigate through that. This first part I'm going to call my 4x4x5 part, because I'm going to get the centers exactly like a 4x4x5. So step one, solve like a 4x4x5 in order to get all of my centers. Step two, once I have my centers, I collapse it down in the shape-shifted form to a 3x3x5. Solve it exactly like a 3x3x5. Once you do that, it'll be out of its shape-shifted form and back into the cuboid form. Step three is, once you have that done, basically what you're going to have is you're going to have tops and bottoms and middles all put in. So you're going to be able to solve it just with parity moves. So step three is you solve it like a 3x4x5 at that step, at that level, which is all parity maneuvers. So let's go ahead and do step one. First thing in terms of perspective is what's going to be my top, what's going to be my bottom. Well, the top and bottom are once again going to be those parts of the puzzle that can make 90-degree turns and then still move. Because as I'm loading things in here, I'm going to have to be exchanging tops to bottoms, so I need to be making 90-degree turns as I'm doing that. So that's obviously going to be the 4x4x6 parts, which in this case is going to be the green and the yellow. Exactly the same as was here when if you remember that tutorial. Brilliant job, Tom. So the first step that I did with the 4x4x5 tutorial was to get my top and my bottom centers. And just to go through that again, I'm going to say define this is yellow and this is green. I need to put this yellow up to here. So let's line it up so that it can do that by doing a double turn. Now, we went over how to put in centers in a very specific video, and I can just refer you to that. It's exactly the same. It's kind of a variation of how to get the centers of the big cubes. That was something else that I did in certain follow-up videos. There's at least 2 follow-up videos to this based on viewer questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get the top and the bottom layer here first. So what I want to do is, let's see, define, because it's an even number, I have to define what I want. So I'm going to put this over here. Now I've described this before in previous tutorials. I'm basically going to want to, we'll move it from the yellow here. I'm going to want to put this yellow up to here. So let's line it up to where double turning it will put it where it's supposed to be. So now I'm going to move it in with this plane. So double turn. Now I've created this 1x2 bar by moving it within this plane. I'm now going to move the face here so I can move this out of the way in this plane and double turn it to bring it out of the way. Now I'm going to turn this face back and move back in what I just turned out. Right over here. Now that I have that there, I'm now going to turn this back to put in the 1x2 bar that I just secured down there. And there it is. So far so good. Easy stuff. Middle is here, so we've defined which is the top and which is the bottom. Alright, now the next step. The next step, as you recall from when we did the 4x4x5, is we want to get these middles over here. Right now, as being a 4x4x5, I'm looking at as though this is one segment, this is another segment, these are two segments here, and this is a segment. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm only going to be concentrating on these centers over here. So what I could do first is see what's already in, luckily none, which makes it easier to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put the red center in over here. It's across here, so I'm just going to double turn, and there it is. And now it's just a simple matter. Turn it out of the way, and now we turn this back. Now while I'm at it, while I'm here, since I'm putting in my red centers first, why don't I organize it to where I can put another red 1x2 bar in? So here's two red 1x2 bars. Why don't I move this over to here? So 1, 2, 1, 2. Now that I've done that, I can get this center back and at the same time move this into here. So each time I move this up and over, I'm going to try to solve two pieces. So move this to the side, we've got two here. Now let's do it on this layer over here. Alright, so here's the red. Where's the other one? It's right here. Move it down. And there it is there. The whole key to putting in centers is to get very comfortable with swapping and replacing. So now I want to put this over here and replace it with something else. So what I'm going to do is move this down here because initially I'm going to put this into a side that's already fixed. It kind of bumps that out of the way. Turn it, move it back, which will put this back. A lot easier to show than to describe, but I'm going to move this in. Double turn and move it back. So I was able to do that and get these back over here and double turn. You really have to use this for yourself to really experience just how smooth this is. So anyway, the red one is in. Now let's work on the orange one. Just so happens two are already solved, so let's go ahead and do the last one here and here. So that's already in for us. Double turn, and I'm going to replace it into here. So how am I going to do that without bopping one of these out? Well, just replace it with this. So put this in here, double turn, and bring it back so I can bring this red one back for plop. And now double turn. Okay, so we've got this in now. We put these in and look to see what you've already got. I've got a blue one here, I've got a white one here. I want to move these two in conjunction with each other. How am I going to do that without destroying these? Well, the key is take one of the 1x2s for any of these sides and put one color here and the same color up here. That way you're not going to mess things up. I've got two different colors here and I can mess it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump this out of the way, double turn it, and then bring it back. So go 1, 2, double turn, and 1, 2. The end result of that is I've got this in place and this was bumped over here. I'm going to do the same thing with this side. Bump this over here and replace it. So 1, 2, double turn, and 1, 2. Alright, so why did I do that? Well, I did that so that I can move these two in place without messing these guys up. And it's not a super cube, so it really doesn't matter. Move it here and take a look. No worries, this is in place, these are fine, this is in place, this is fine. So now it's just a matter of moving these guys back and reconstituting what we had. Plus, we've got to get this middle one back. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to go ahead and do a very similar concept where we have two of the same color. So what if I were to try to put the white one over here, which can coincide with this? Maybe that'll work. So let's bump this out of the way, double turn, get that old blue one out, and let's double turn it again. So, yeah, something like that. And that works. All of these are in. This, and this. Once I've done that, I've got all my centers, so let's just start putting things in. This is red. I know opposite red is going to be orange, so I'm going to just start putting in and replacing. Not really reinventing the wheel here. And if I am, well, they should have patented it. And this comes over here. Okay. So now what's going to be here? I've got a couple of choices. Is it going to be white or is it going to be blue? I'm going to use a corner here to dictate that for me. I usually like to have green on the bottom for some reason. So I'm going to put this here. This is actually supposed to be white. So that's going to be easy. This will be my white side, according to this corner, which is green, and this is the green corner over here. So let's put the other white one in here. This to here. The way that I do that is I match this up to another white, so I can put it in, bumping the other white one out of the way, double turn, and move that back, and all is right with the world. So we've got our centers. But we're not done with our 4x4x5 solve yet, because we still have to get the edges. Now these edges are a variation of what we saw with the big cubes as well. But we have to use some potential corner turning strategies. This is the part of the puzzle that I enjoy as well. So let's get our green corners. Now I'm going to tell you that I'm going to define these as what the terminal end is here. So in other words, this piece here is an extension, these two are an extension of each other. I'm going to define this whole thing as what this piece is here. So this is actually the red, yellow, and white piece, not the blue and the green piece. That's going to come later. And you're going to see why I do that in a bit. But anyway, so I want the other yellow and green, which is right over here. So the way that I do that, same kind of concept. Turn down. Now that I've made it, I'm going to move it over to here. So, well, I might as well move it over to here where the orange one is. So put it here, turn the face, and this whole thing becomes the face here, and bring it back. Because we're still looking at this as a 4x4x5. And then bring this back like so. End result is we put this in here. Again, a variation of the big cuboids. I'm going to stick with greens, green and red. Here's the other green and red here. So I want to move this into here, just like so. So I can do that. Upon doing that, we'll go ahead and move this down by 2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this into here so that this will be my, I'm just going to move all of my green edges into this side here. So move it and knock out the orange one that we just did, double turn the face, and move it back. And basically what that did is it put both of my greens on this side, so now I can comfortably move it back. Yeah, interesting. Okay, what else do we have? I've got the green and white. So doing all greens here. Now this green and blue happen to be fine, so I'm going to have to move this out of the way. I can't put it here because it's saturated with greens, so I'm just going to put this green and blue to this side here. So turn, double turn, and then bring it back, and we're good. Here's a green and white. Where's the other green and white? Right over here. They're at opposite ends, but I have to turn this 180 here, and then double turn it. Okay, so we're here, and we'll move it to our final position, nowhere here, but here. So turn this up, because this has to bump this out of the way. So move it in, double turn, move it out, and double turn. Okay, so the end result of that is we have all of our green edges, these guys. So my next step is I'm just going to move them down to the green side. I'm going to get my cross. So this comes here, double turn. Whoop, we're already there. So there, green and yellow, double turn. So we're there. Green and blue, here, double turn, we're there. and green and white. So believe it or not, this is actually my cross. Now I'm completely ignoring these over here. These are little more than just extensions of these guys. This is going to come with our last step, but this is how I'm going to define it. So we've got our cross over here. We don't really need that as long as we have the edges. Now the question is, how do we get these edges in? And again, I'm using the same strategies that I used with the 4x4x5 and 5x5x4 for that matter. Sorry, guy. Now, when you get this, 100% of the time, this is what you're going to end up with. You're going to get a whole mess of edges that don't belong, but you're going to get one of whatever color that does belong. The only cuboid that it didn't always work out that way was the 4x4x2, as you recall, and I had a special way of getting out of that particular insane situation. But what I'm going to do, if I want to move these in, I'm going to look at all of these like they were corners. So these are corners. These two collectively make corners. These make corners. So I'm treating it almost like it was a 2x2 with no edges, just corners. Because ultimately what I want to do is move a red one into here. So I can do that by taking a red one, if it was here, from this corner and doing a corner swap with this coming here and this coming here. That makes sense? Well, it's going to make sense because the algorithm that I'm going to use is a corner swap algorithm, treating this edge like it was part of a corner. But I need to get the red one, and I don't have that there. I have the orange one. The red one is over here. So, to do my evil diabolical plan, I've got to move this red one to here. So I'm going to abandon for now, for the moment, the concept that these are all corners, and I'm going to say, okay, let's just say these are edges again. And I'm going to do an adjacent edge swap to take these two collectively and swap them with these two. Once I do that, then I can look at this collectively here as a corner. So let me show you what I mean. These two are going to be edges that I'm going to swap with each other, and I'm going to do the adjacent edge swap algorithm. Now you can apply this to any of the big cubes that have 4 in it, 4x4x5, 5x5x4. So, you know, this is going to be our corner, these are going to be our edge, 2r, u, 2r, u, 2r, 2u, 2r, 2u, 2r, u, 2r, ui, 2r. And lo and behold, that's exactly what it did. I put my red one here, just next to this. Now I'm going to shift my perspective, and instead of looking at these as edges, I'm now going to look at these guys as corners, like this. And by doing a corner swap from this to this, I'll be able to put this red with this, and all of my edges are going to be magically in. So the next algorithm is going to be a corner swapping algorithm, moving it from here. And the corner swapping, not the edge swapping, but the corner swapping now, instead of looking at these collectively, you know, as an edge like that, I'm going to look at them as corner like this. So that's going to be moving from here, 2r, u, 2r, ui, 2r. Then I do a ui, and then the bottom one I do a d, 2r, ui, 2r, u, and 2r. And through the magic of algorithms, look at that. You've got all of your edges where they need to be. And then, of course, this moves back. Now, if you wanted to, just for the sake of symmetry, although it really doesn't matter, but if you're so motivated, we can actually put these and get our extended cross. So we can do an opposite edge switch, 2r, 2u, 2r, 2u, 2r, 2u. Okay, and this concludes step 1, which is the 4x4x5 solution. The whole purpose of that was to put all of our centers in and all of our edges in.